I'm going to share a few facts with you. They were correct yesterday, might be true today. That's the speed at which AI is moving. Everything's changing really, really quickly. And I'll also be sharing a few ideas and thoughts which I hope will be stimulating. So, here we go. A wonderfully Anglo-Saxon, traditionally named American called Alexander Wang took out a full-page advert in the Washington Post last week. And as you can see, it reads, "Dear President Trump, please don't deport me." It says, "America must win the AI war." So this is the guy who's the CEO and founder of Scale AI. And obviously, if you're sitting in America, you're a little bit concerned about the coming powerhouse of artificial intelligence here in Malta. But perhaps you're a little bit more concerned about China. And any way you look at artificial intelligence, whether you're doing geopolitical analysis, technical analysis, commercial analysis, the subtext is competition between America and China. And this is not just commercial competition, market competition. It's much more than that. After Trump had given his State of the Union awe-fest, the Chinese embassy in Washington wrote a very short message which says, "Look, America, if you want a war, be it a trade war, a tariff war, or any other kind of war you care to mention, just know that we will fight to the end." Right? That's the embassy, is the Chinese embassy responding to Donald Trump. And just as the Congress lady held up her notice saying, "These are not normal times." No, they're not normal times. On the 25th of January, Donald Trump signed an executive order which said that America will be preeminent in artificial intelligence. On the 27th of January, Deepseek was launched, which may have been immediacy of that executive order. And let me put it to you that Deepseek was probably as much...
You cannot have a meetup without technical issues.
Deepseek, but probably as much a surprise to the Chinese Communist Party, their cadre, their committees, their AI labs. Is this gone as well? I think so. Okay. And as it was to the shareholders of NVIDIA who lost $600 billion of wealth that day. And incidentally, just to show you how stupid the American capital is, NVIDIA probably are not the business that's been most hurt by Deepseek. And in fact, Deepseek probably creates a huge opportunity for NVIDIA. Now, on the 17th of February, President Xi Jinping of China held a symposium for technologists and entrepreneurs in China. And you'd think that at that symposium, the hero would be Liang Wenfeng, the guy from Deepseek, who's just lifted AI in China from a little bit of a joke, ChatGPT 3.5 level, to preeminence in the world and completely destroyed American hegemony. But no, they have a gala dinner that evening, and anyone who's been involved in a Chinese banquet knows the most important thing that everyone says everything about you is where you're seated in the on the table. So our guy, Liang Wenfeng, gets the seat which is, we weren't really going to invite you, but we squeeze you in at the end. Oops. There's Xi Jinping. Opposite Xi Jinping, you've got BYD, the people who are beating swastikas, and you've got Huawei, and the guy at Deepseek has the wall to talk to. But actually, he's sitting there to Liman, the guy from Tencent, which is actually very significant, we'll find out. So who is Liang Wenfei? Now, on Saturday, I had a couple of conversation with a friend of mine in China who knows this guy. So they've been inside. Liang Wenfei is born in 1985. So he's a baby. He's not yet 40. That's very unusual in China. Everybody else at that dinner are all male and old. Incidentally, I'm not old. Everybody else is old. Okay. So he's a high flyer. And what he's done, he's the hedge fund. And he's a quant, i.e. brilliant mathematician. And what he's doing with this hedge fund, this $1 billion hedge fund, that's respectable. That's not big by hedge fund standards, right? Quants, they work on multivariate analysis, multi-factor analysis, which they model mathematically and then run their models against real-world data, match it up, reiterate, keep on recycling those models. And what Liang Wenfeng decided was that this is something which is really, really appropriate for artificial intelligence to do. So what he did back in 2021 was he started buying thousands of NVIDIA chips to start this whole process. And my friend actually mentored Liang Wenfeng and very proud of himself for this. One of the things which he got Liang Wenfeng to do was always to use the previous generation of hardware in the development. And that actually gives them three advantages. The first is that the hardware is rock solid. It's proven in the market. It works. The second is it forces the engineers to really think about the fundamental problems they're addressing so that the conceptualization of what they're achieving in building this engine is absolute rock solid. And then finally, when it's ready to roll out, they're not waiting for the hardware manufacturer to release the latest and greatest. They can lift it up onto the latest level chips when they're ready to launch. So at the end of this process, he got hold of a whole load of NVIDIA Blackwell B200s, which of course the latest and greatest. And of course you might say, well, wait a minute, China's banned from having these sorts of chips. They can't get those chips in China. Well, we all admire Singapore as a powerhouse technologically. And even so, it's a little bit peculiar that 7 million people in Singapore buy 30% of all the latest chips produced by NVIDIA. Sufficient to say, 7 Singaporeans were arrested in the weekend for chip running to China. One other thing to say is that it's common mythology that Deepseek cost 5 million. It didn't. It cost 150 million. There were 200 engineers working on this in addition to everything they were buying. And of course, he's running a hedge fund, so he's using other people's money to pay for this thing. So what makes Deepseek so special? Why has Deepseek shocked the world? Now, it's open source for a start. Originally, OpenAI was going to be open source. You know, the hint's in the name, OpenAI open source. But the people backing OpenAI with tens of billions of dollars said, well, if we're putting all that money in, then we want protection of our IPR. We need you to be proprietary. So OpenAI went closed, went proprietary. And the others followed, being closed and proprietary. And Meta sort of went open source. But the people who truly went open source were the Chinese and Deepseek. And the reason why they've gone open source is the proprietary market is taken. The Americans have taken it all, so they had nowhere else to go. Now, I've taken a bit of a liberty calling it free. It's not quite free, but DeepSeek costs about 4% of the price of OpenAI. OpenAI have made a right mess of their product definitions and the way they price everything. And in fact, when Deepseek hits the market, OpenAI suddenly rushed a whole lot of products that we're going to charge for out into the market for free. And of course, they launched ChatGPT 4.5, which, had it not been for Deepseek, would have been the big story of February. But it went out into the market with barely a whimper. So, what Deepseek has done has completely wrecked the ability for the proprietary systems to make a profit, right? Even so, we're still seeing OpenAI collecting hundreds of billions for future development. But, their reaction to that, well, when are you going to make any money? They say maybe 2029. Whereas Deepseek is already profitable. Deepseek has the most amazing economics. They calculate that it's been reported as 585% margin. Well, it was never such a thing. But for every euro or dollar which Deepseek expends, they calculate they should get $585 back, of which about $584 is probably operating costs. 87 grand to operate this, generating about 200 million of revenue. So the Chinese have worked out how to make AI profitable, and the Americans haven't. Now, NVIDIA, as we talked about, got hammered in the market. Yes, there is a risk that because DeepSeek doesn't require the amount of compute that OpenAI does, that NVIDIA will not sell as many chips. But there is this Jevons paradox. Jevons was a Victorian economist, and he noticed that as steam engines became more efficient, more coal got sold because the price of power was dropping, the demand for power was increasing more than the price was dropping, and so the overall demand went up. There's probably going to be a Jevons paradox running for NVIDIA. Now, how did they do this? Now, I've seen 9 claims of individual technologies that DeepSeek has cracked, and that's the reason why DeepSeek is so good. The reality is, it's not 9 individual technologies. They've cracked all 9 technologies and put them all together. So they knew that in any engineering solution, you're as weak as the weakest part of your solution. So they focus on every part of AI development to get it better, and then pull it all together. And they did this in such a way that the whole team was fully integrated doing it. So some of the things which they've done, typically take OpenAI, when you put in a token or a word, the prediction of what comes next is looking at the entire body of human knowledge to do the calculations as to the probability of the next word, right? That's called general attention. Whereas what Deepseek does, it does some calculations, what they call multiple latency, in advance of actually going searching. So they cut down the amount of search which it does. They also don't look at a single token. They create sliding windows of attention. So they are looking at phrases as they go, making the probabilistic decisions. And this creates infinite length context. And the long and short of it is that DeepSeek only needs 4% of the power, i.e. energy, that OpenAI does. And you're talking about an engine which is only 34% the size of OpenAI. So they cracked a lot of problems all at once. And it isn't as though anyone else has said, well, we didn't know we had those problems. They did. But everyone else was looking at the problems in silos. They weren't looking at it holistically in the way that Deepseek did. Now, there are, looking ahead in terms of what Deepseek's going to bring, remember, they're a quant. So what they're doing on a quant is a sort of super multi-dimensional Excel spreadsheet, best way of describing it. So if anybody's going to produce an AI Excel spreadsheet, which somebody like me can use, chances are it's going to be Deepseek. They're also, coming down to the point in relation to the Chinese Communist Party, they have crept up from outside of the milieu of the way that the Chinese state works. They're totally independent. And the way that they're maintaining their independence is that Deepseek actually achieves the highest score, or lowest score, depending on how you look at it, on applying Chinese censorship. Right? So the Chinese government can't come after them for spreading stories which the Chinese government doesn't like. Now, this is rather paradoxical, because if you are going to censor so that absolutely every conceivable reference of Tiananmen Square, which the Chinese Communist Party doesn't like, is taken out of the system, you can flip it in reverse and say, instead of using that for censoring, you can select material which is usable for individuals or for businesses or particular industries. In other words, you get very highly personalized LLMs as a result of this highly effective censorship which they're doing. And so that is another area where Deepseek is going to lead way ahead of OpenAI and the rest of it. And then coming back to the point about them being open source, the way Deepseek has worked by being open source is they shared their development with all of corporate China. So they not only use other people's money, they use other people's time improving what Deepseek's going to be. And that Deepseek inside strategy is the reason why the moment Deepseek came out, we all went, and there's another one from China, and there's another one from China, and here's another one. You know, Guko, Kimi, Huayang from WeChat, right? They weren't. It wasn't a case that the whole of China is suddenly different geniuses. It was a case of everybody was taking Deepseek and putting their own wraparounds, and everybody was now there with their product. WeChat is going to be building AI agents using Deepseek. Huawei, you're going to go cloud solutions using Deepseek. They're also going to be delivering chips using Deepseek. And then as we move on, I mean, this is rundown, right? Alibaba's out there. They got rundown saying it's even better than Deepseek. Well, it's Deepseek simply optimized for Alibaba. And watch what's going on here. There's a video product coming out from Alibaba, again with Deepseek. Now, so that's Deepseek, which is what we all think of as the bright Chinese breakthrough. But anything you do when you're thinking about China, you've got to think about the government. What is the government doing? Now, 2 years ago, I gave a talk about Web3 in China. This is one of the slides I showed then, which is the legislation for Web3. And it's as true 2 years ago as it is today. Now, there's a guy called Root. Anyway, no? I've been having an argument with it. But this is it. Ban on Bitcoin in 2021. Technically speaking, they didn't ban Bitcoin. What they did ban was trading with Bitcoin, which is as good as using Bitcoin if you can't price and sell it. Anyway, the key to the use of Web3 in China is this legislation, the Blockchain Service Network. That says that if you have any distributed ledger running in China, you've got to run, and you've got it on any server, that server has to be licensed. And the terms of the license are that the government can see what's going on in that server. So the blockchain is an autocrat's dream. They can see everything. And that's why Web3 is going to be rolled out so it ease the way that China operates by 2030. Everything will be on the blockchain because the government can see everything. And the way they handle, obviously, all this gazillions of data is by using artificial intelligence. Now, AI is a bit different from blockchain. The Chinese government is actually quite schizophrenic about it. They say they want to be world dominant of it. But actually, AI is a threat to the Chinese Communist Party. Just think about it. You can say to a businessman, look, you do your business and keep out of our politics. It's a bit difficult to say that to an AI. Equally, if your whole political philosophy is based on only a portion of the sum total of human knowledge, what are you going to do with AIs running on large language models which are accessing 60% of human knowledge which you don't like? So AI is a threat to the Chinese as well as being something which they want to dominate. And that schizophrenic relationship with AI reflected in the fact that, amazingly, there is no central AI excellent research center in China, not at the very top level, not at the regional levels, not in the subject matter area levels. AI doesn't have a research center. Now, I showed you that really simple graph timeline of a Web3 legislation. This is the timeline for AI legislation. There's a lot of it, right? Because they're scared of it. And there's two things I want to draw your attention to. This ends about the 30th of November 2022. That's when ChatGPT 3.5 was launched. So they were very prescient. They'd done all this legislating to AI even before ChatGPT 3.5 was out there. Second thing, when we're talking about ethics, this ethics as defined by Xi Jinping thought. When we're talking about personal information protection, that is actually a way to keep the yanks out. Basically, to achieve personal protection in China, you've set up a set of rules that no American AI would ever be able to comply with. So it's a way of keeping the Americans out. And if you think that was busy, this is what they're doing in 24 and 25. So a whole load more legislation. Notice the focus on security. That's security not for the systems, that's security for the Chinese Communist Party. And also, we're really worried about AGI. Okay. So, where are we at? Who's winning? So again, this is from my friend and his view on who's ahead on the AI market. First of all, when it comes to compute, making NVIDIA chips, building data centers which use more power than San Francisco, they're not competing. Right? The Americans have won that. The Chinese are building chips for self-defense, but they're not competing in the computing. Equally, data. The Americans already mined the sum total of human knowledge forever. Right? The Chinese not only can't compete in that, they don't want to compete. There's about an awful lot of human knowledge is stuff which they don't want their people to know about. But when it comes to algorithms, I'm going to show you with Deepseek. The Chinese have got their noses in front. The Chinese are winning there. And also, when it comes to uses and applications, that's where the Chinese are looking to win. And this area, particularly industrial use, building AI applications, is where my friends are sticking, not his money, but other people's money for them, this whole area. But you've got to think about it. The Chinese absolutely dominate manufacturing, not only within China, but outside of China. They're so much bigger than the Americans, Europeans, and everybody else. Now, there's a really, really important point to make. Compute and data is where you spend money on AI. Algorithm usage and applications, that's where you make money on AI. The Americans are siloed in the area where they got to spend billions and billions and billions and billions, and the Chinese are in the area where, if there is profit to make from AI, they are going to. So, where are we at? This is a quote from Deepseek. You'll note that this growth is supported by a synergistic relationship between big tech companies, startups, and academic institutions. No mention of government, right? So that's Deepseek giving their noses clean. But we're in a situation where China is still relatively small in revenue terms. The Americans are making 4 times more revenue, despite all the limitations I've shared with you, than the Chinese are in 2025. And the really shocking number is this one. OpenAI, 85% of all prompts are done on OpenAI everywhere in the world. And yet, unlike Microsoft, which made monstrous amounts of money out of being the provider of Windows and Office, OpenAI 2024 only made 3.9 billion of revenue. They're not monetizing this enormous lead, and they don't know how to monetize it. So, in summary, who's going to win? I don't know. I don't think it's a given that China wins. I don't think it is at all. I think that we are in a very strange world. Remember, AI is still very new. There's room for others to come through. Europe could come through. More likely, India will come through to challenge the hegemony. Over here, we've got weapons of God knows what. If there is a conflict between China and Taiwan, it's going to make Ukraine look like a little local difficulty. Remember, Taiwan, the Taiwanese economy, is much closer in size to the Russian economy than it is to the Ukrainian. Right? And Taiwan, with all their engineering excellence, if they get blockaded, then the whole world no longer gets their advanced electronics, as well as, of course, TSMC. So this situation in the Taiwan Straits is absolutely critical, not just for China, but for the rest of us. However, one thing which is right, and this is a graphic from White Boss, I think for the foreseeable future, we're living in a Deepseek world. And Deepseek has got such a lead, and the way that they're operating being open source, and by being open source, I mean, let me give you a crazy example. There's a Canadian company has come up with a solution which puts back into Deepseek all the stuff which is censored out in China. So you can get Deepseek to read you a story about Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh is banned in China because he looks like Xi Jinping. So Deepseek, I think we're in a Deepseek world for the foreseeable future. And I'll leave you with this thought. What are you Deepseek? Deepseek
is almost the American dream. We have one individual, a young individual, who's a housebuzz guy. He's a quant. He goes and riffs everything to create this magnificent product hidden away. It is the archetypal American company based in Hangzhou, China. Thank you very much.
We are a crypto-native community that aims to learn and share knowledge together. Join us at Soho, The Strand, every Wednesday to dive into our questions section live.